Let's talk about the lottery. Perhaps you'd be more interested in this. 2 ticket holders have scooped the biggest jackpot in the lottery's history. They're taking home £33 million each, approximately.
Approximately, yeah, well, what's a few million between friends? But how do you deal with becoming an instant multi-millionaire? What impact could that have on your life?
Let's talk to Justin Urquhart-Stewart, who's an investment manager and a psychologist, Jo Hemmings, who joins us in our London studio. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Justin, what would you say?
Be very careful indeed. It's all about very, very careful planning. One of the first things you have to try and do with this is almost try and distance yourself from the money. It's all very well sitting there and say, I'm rich, I don't have to work. Actually, it can be disastrous. What you need to do is sit down and do some proper planning with the family and everything. And if it's a large amount of money...
With the family? You'd tell the family, would you?
Well, you probably have, they'll find out anyway. So then you have to make sure your back is well covered. Because this is actually one of the key things that we should actually think about. On the basis that most of us aren't going to win the lottery, how do we actually make sure we get our own lottery? Actually make more time to actually coordinate our own financial affairs so that actually you can have the equivalent of a lottery win within your own family.
And I'm sorry to sound cynical, but how do you know who you can trust? Because I would imagine with any lottery win, however big or small, people come out the woodwork, you get requests for money, charities, all that sort of thing on your back to try and get...
Your family's going to double in size overnight. You'll be amazed how many cousins you didn't know you had. No, what you need to have is you put something in front of you. Effectively, you form what would be called a sort of family office, which effectively runs it. That means that will then give you an income, which means you've got boundaries. You can operate within that, just as if you're receiving a salary. You can then manage the charity side of it, manage actually how you handle the family, and make sure you are then being able to live within a box which controls what's going on, and you're not out of control.
OK, so we know what we should do financially if we've won. Jo, let's think about our psychological health when it comes to this. You've won the lottery, or someone's won the lottery. What would you advise them in terms of behaviour today and in the coming weeks?
I think what happens, the first thing is there's obviously complete shock, because you never, ever think it's going to be you, in spite of all the advertising telling you otherwise. Then you get euphoria, because it's just, it's dizzying to imagine having won all this money, and it actually has happened to you. And then there tends to be, it will depend on your character. Now, the personality types that are pretty anchored and secure in their homes, their family, their jobs, doesn't tend to impact them so much, but those that have no real ties or are a bit more spontaneous, and it's quite often the younger ones, will just go on a sort of crazy spending spree because they've never had money like it. So what tends to happen is that post-euphoric state, terribly happy everybody, you sort of come back to the type of character you were, and those that have the strongest anchors in life, their home, their jobs, their family, their environment, are the ones that tend to manage that better.
Assuming you haven't won, Jo, the issue, of course, for most people who are watching...
I don't think so, sadly. I haven't had that call.
But 1 in 45 million chance of winning the lottery, yes, or winning the jackpot yesterday. Yet they were still selling, 400 tickets a second at the height of the sort of euphoria about this. We still want to be in it, don't we? We still want to have that slim chance, however small, to perhaps have a chance of winning.
We still do, and it is 1 in 45 million, as you say, and I heard yesterday you're more likely to have give birth to or have as a family identical quadruplets than you are to win that particular lottery. But nevertheless, it's the ripple effect. It's almost like that panic buying that we get when we know something's running out. We've got to have it. And so there were huge queues forming. A lot of people couldn't buy tickets. But because of things like social media, because the lottery, I suppose, has flattened out a bit in terms of its popularity in recent years, this was suddenly a huge groundswell of enthusiasm, and back people were, just like the early days of the lottery, and everybody wanted that opportunity.
Justin, it's a tricky question because you deal with really individuals with a lot of personal wealth, as well as people with maybe an average or,
ordinary savers,
Yeah. What's the ideal amount to have?
It's very difficult. It depends on what you're like and what you're going to try and do. We don't educate people about money in this country. We don't need any more economists. We need to teach people finance. How much money do you need to retire on? Actually, an awful lot of this you could do within the family. Especially, we've often got 4 or 5 generations in the family. How many assets have you got in the family? If you actually invested that across the family over the next few years, and you could actually develop that so you could get 6-7% a year, you'll be doubling your money every 10 years. a family could get some way to a lottery win within 20 years if it coordinates itself. So don't necessarily take the bet on the 1 in 40 million, but actually have a chance of doing something yourself. So if you could have a reasonable sum of, say, £4 or £5 million, that could make a significant difference to a family without necessarily tearing it all apart.
There is hope for us all, then.
But there's a lesson in that too, don't you think, about, whether you've won or not, planning your finances, working out, as Justin says, what you need to retire, what you need to live on, what you want to spend on holidays and things. That's the lesson out of all this.
Yeah, but it's not as much fun as buying a ticket and getting £33 million.
You got a rollover.
Justin, many thanks. Jo, many thanks as well.
Thank you.